This is the Thursday, April 10th, 2014 meeting of the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals. Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Vig, Mr. Cars,
Here.
Mr. Ron,
Here.
Ms. Eicher,
Here.
Mr. Hart, Ms. Dole,
Here.
Ms. McKay.
Here.
Thank you.
We have a quorum this evening, and we have a short board currently with 5 members, but we can proceed with our agenda, and once we get to our first case to be heard, we can discuss the procedure that we can follow from there. We have before us minutes for the February 13th and March 13th, 2014 meetings that we need to approve. Has everyone had a chance to look at those minutes? Are there any comments? If there are no comments, could I have a motion to approve, please? Yes, Ms. McKay. Thank you. Ms. Eicher?
I also move to approve.
Okay, thank you. You've seconded those?
Yep.
Motions. Is there any comments? Anything that want to be pulled? If not, could we vote on that? The minutes are hereby approved. Moving on our agenda, special order of business. Are there any disclosures this evening? Mr. Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a disclosure for case number 2014-039. I represent a client in working on a project that has ongoing actions that are under review by an agency that the petitioner works for. I just would like to state that for the record, and in going through the conflict of interest questions, I'll state that I do not believe I have a substantial financial interest or a substantial private interest in the matter now before the body. That interest, again, is not part of the present action because the interest doesn't exist, is not one that varies directly and substantially with the outcome of this case, is not immediate and known or conjectural and dependent on factors beyond the body's action, again, is not significant monetarily, and the final litmus test of generally possessed by a large group or only by an individual is, in my estimation, generally possessed by a large group.
Thank you, Mr. Ron. And just for the record, that was with respect to case 2014-049. That's being heard this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's correct.
Thank you. I don't get credit for that. Blake brought that to my attention. Very well. Could I have a motion to direct Mr. Ron to participate, please? Yes, Ms. McKay, you've indicated as such. And Ms. Eicher, you seconded that?
Yes.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I would. Yes, Mr. Ron, you're hereby directed to participate in the case.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are there any other disclosures this evening? Any other disclosures? Seeing none, that concludes our item C. We have no other items on the consent agenda, appearance requests, unfinished business, or regular agenda. That brings us to our first case this evening, which is case 2014-049. Before I read the procedure for before I read the variance hearings procedure, we are a short board this evening. And what that means is that for a variance to be approved, it requires a majority of the fully constituted board. The fully constituted board is 9 members, so you need a vote of, in the affirmative, of 5 voting members, or 5 board members. In this case, we have 5 members in attendance, so you'd need to have all 5 of the board members vote in favor of your variance. What is typically done when there is a short board is offer a postponement if the petitioner so wishes of their public hearing application. And I'd like to read what the policy is regarding the postponement that's in our agenda. When there's a short 5-member board or commission and a postponement is offered to and agreed to by the petitioner, they will be moved to the next regular agenda. This should occur within 30 days, which does not require renoticing the case or new public hearing notices or advertising. If the petitioner is willing to postpone but unable to attend the next available meeting date within 30 days, the petitioner has a one-time only option to choose the next date certain he or she can attend at no extra fee. When a postponement is requested by the petitioner, there is a rescheduling fee and a new public hearing shall be determined by the planning division. This will put their case in the next available cutoff date queue as if they were submitting their case for the first time. So seeing that I'm assuming you are the one and only petitioner here this evening, could you come forward, please, and just explain, make sure you understand the situation before we proceed. Could you state and spell your name for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Shannon Miller. Last name Miller, M-I-L-L-E-R. First name Shannon, S-H-A-N-N-O-N.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Go ahead.
Mitch Miller, last name M-I-L-L-E-R, M-I-D-C-H.
Thank you, Mr. I don't want to presume anything, Mr. Mrs. or the Millers.
Good assumption.
Do you understand what we have before us and what we want to make sure the applicants understand and are aware of the situation before we start to hear this case and proceed with acting on the case?
Yeah, we understand. Okay. Do we get to see what the vote result is first?
Nice try. But no problem with asking, but the answer is no.
I'd ask.
Sure. But just would like you to understand and then decide if you do want us to proceed with hearing the case this evening.
Yeah, we understand and we'd like to proceed.
Very well. Thank you. You can have a seat then, and we'll proceed with the first case this evening is case 2014-049. The petitioners are Mitchell and Shannon Miller and have indicated they're here this evening. It is a request from 2110 table to 2110-6 dimensional standards. Sorry, I jumped a little bit ahead. Before we get into the case, let me read the order of business for variance hearings. The chair shall introduce the variance and explain the procedure to be followed. The variance case number and the name of the applicant shall be read into the record. The board shall hear and rule on any objections to the sufficiency of notice. The board shall hear a brief staff presentation outlining the variance, not to exceed 10 minutes. On the conclusion of the staff presentation, the board members and the applicant may then direct questions to the staff through the chair. The applicant shall give his or her presentation not to exceed 10 minutes. Throughout the proceedings, the burden of proof rests with the applicant, who must convince the board by the preponderance of the evidence that the variance should be granted. On conclusion of the applicant's presentation, the board members and the staff may then direct questions to the applicant through the chair. The hearing shall then be open for public testimony. Each person has 3 minutes. Representatives of groups have 5 minutes. All persons who testify may be questioned by the board, staff, or the applicant. On conclusion of the public testimony, the staff, followed by the applicant, shall have the right of rebuttal. The board shall proceed to develop oral findings and conclusions with regard to the variance and disposition of the variance. The staff shall reduce the oral findings and conclusions to writing for the subsequent adoption by the board at a later meeting. The matter then rests with the board, and the chair asks for a positive motion from the board. So with that, again, that brings us to case 2014-049. Ms. O'Brien, I believe you're presenting this case for staff. Could you provide us with the sufficiency of notice, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On March 20th this year, 47 public hearing notices were mailed. 6 notices were returned unclaimed. 6 notices were, 1 was returned in support. It came after the packet was written, so it was just slipped into the packet before it was printed, and none were returned opposed. I'd just like to note that there was a comment, a public comment that may have been forwarded to the board members, and it was for case 2014-039, encroachment into a front yard setback, but it really doesn't pertain to this case.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. You'd indicated there was one comment that came in late. I don't know that, excuse me. Was that in our packet separate?
No, on page 43.
Oh, okay.
On page 43, that is the one that was received,
Okay.
having no objection whatsoever. It was received after the packet was written. The packet stated, as written, stated that none were received either opposed or in support of the variance. But this appears to be in support of the variance.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien.
So I wanted to clarify that. As mentioned, this is a variance request to allow the subdivision of one lot into two lots where one of the proposed lots will not meet the minimum area of 1 acre. In the Chugach Eagle River R6 Low Density Residential District, this was reviewed under the new code. The petition site is 2.21 acres. It's a BLM lot that was platted originally in 1917. A 50-foot wide BLM right-of-way and utility reservation easement runs along both the east and the south property boundaries. This property was developed in 1968 with a single-family dwelling. It's served by on-site utilities. Other improvements include a detached garage, a Quonset hut, and a shed. The lot is fairly level and even and heavily forested with minimal clearing that appears to have occurred during development of the property. Also, a fence is located along the north and west property boundaries and also along the inside boundary of the 50-foot BLM road reservation along the south and east property boundaries. In reviewing the 8 standards for a variance request under the new code, it appeared that special circumstances did exist in that the lots created by the Bureau of Land Management usually measured 330 by 330 or contained 2.5 acres. However, the petition site was platted with an area of 2.21 acres. 64 lots were platted within the northeast quarter of Section 25, and 23 of those lots have been further platted or subdivided by warranty deed without having to seek a variance for lot area. Under the old code, the minimum lot size in the R6 was 1.25 acre. I'm just using that as a reference. However, you could use half the adjoining right-of-way in calculating the acreage of the lot. Under the new code, a minimum lot size is 1 acre. It's a smaller lot size required, but you cannot use the adjoining right-of-way in calculating the lot area of an R6 lot. The subdivision of Lot 30 will likely require the dedication of a 30-foot wide right-of-way for Carlisle Street that abuts the east property boundary, which is approximately 9,900 square feet for that dedication, which cannot be used in calculating the lot area. That would be for the west half of Carlisle Street. There has been a dedication for the east half of Carlisle Street. That's why I'm pretty sure that a dedication for the west half will be required. So nearly 40% of the 64 lots within the northeast quarter of Section 25 have been subdivided into 2 lots and in some cases into 3 lots without having to require or request a variance. The size of the lot and the result of are not the result of actions by the petitioner, and if granted, the variance will not affect the use of adjacent property, which is largely developed with single-family residential uses on large lots. It will not allow a use that is not otherwise allowed in the R6 district. It will allow a plat to be submitted that creates 2 lots, one which will be 45,170 square feet, and the other lot would be 40,557. Both lots will meet the minimum 40,000 square foot lot size required for an on-site septic system to serve a single-family residential use in accordance with AMC 1565. There should be no impact on access to the property as required by the American with Disabilities Act, and the property cannot be divided into two lots of equal size due to the existing development that has existed since 1968. Proposed Lot B is required to be larger in order to meet the required 25-foot side yard setback if a new property boundary is created. Proposed Lot A would be then 3,003 square feet short of meeting the minimum 1 acre lot size, which represents approximately a 7% variance. The department, as the 8 standards did appear to be met, the department did recommend approval of the variance request, and it was subject to the recommended conditions on page 9, recording a notice of a zoning action and recording a final plat for the proposed lots. And on pages 10 through 11, 12, page 10 through 12 is a listing of all of the subdivisions that have been created in the subdividing the 2.5 acre lots within section 25 northeast quarter. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Are there any questions of staff by the board members? Thank you. Could the petitioner come forward, please? You previously indicated you are Shannon and Mitchell Miller. You have 10 minutes for your for your presentation. And again, we have to find that all 8 standards are met. So if your presentation can touch on those if you haven't already done so in your application, or feel that, excuse me, if you could have your presentation, make sure you address the standards. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Well, I think our application covers the 8 standards that we needed to meet, but the short form would be our lot we bought 8 years ago from my parents, who bought it from my grandparents, who'd owned it since the late 60s. We always had the understanding that we'd be able to subdivide just because so many of the other lots in the area had been subdivided into 2 or 3 lots. We approached the city a little over a year ago, found out that it's not so straightforward, that we might be short a few square feet, and we're informed we'd have to get this variance. So our position is that when this area was subdivided by BLM, their limits of their survey are usually section lines, and it just so happens that our lot and I think 3 adjacent lots north and south of us abut the section line that kind of truncated the 2.5 acre increments that they typically divide land into, creating our odd shaped, or I guess it is an odd shaped lot, limiting it to 2.21 acres. Our neighbors to the north and south, I think to the north, are slightly smaller than ours. To the south, slightly bigger, just because of the converging, I assume it's because of the converging section lines. That's how that works. So our feeling is that we should be granted a variance in order to treat our lot in kind with our neighbors' lots. I don't know if I need to read all my responses, but I think we addressed all the 8 requirements in our application. Do I need to go through them, or?
It's up to you. Typically, they are summarized by the applicant in their presentation, but
Okay, well, I will go through them.
it's your call.
So I guess that's the explanation number 1. Is there an extraordinary physical circumstance of our property that limits its use in comparison to the surrounding land? Number 2, because of these physical circumstances, the strict application of this code would create an exceptional or unique undue hardship upon the property owner. Well, I think that's pretty straightforward. We wouldn't have the ability to subdivide. We wouldn't have, which is obviously a huge monetary hardship on us, not to mention it would prevent us from building our future house in the area that we very much enjoy to live in. Number 3, it's not self-imposed. We weren't around in 1917 when they surveyed this. And number 4, will it adversely affect our neighbors? Absolutely not. It's very much in character with other lots in the neighborhood. Our development will be able to abide by all setbacks, front, rear, side setbacks required.
I think, too, it's worth saying here that we spoke with many of our neighbors and were able to obtain signatures that were in support of the subdivision.
Number 5, will it change the character of the zoning district? And no, for the same reasons. It'll be very similar to the neighboring lots. I don't think number 6 really applies to us, so I think we have that covered. And the ADA requirements, I don't think apply. And this is the minimum variance needed to get our lot subdivided. I think that's it. Do you have anything? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does staff have any questions of the applicant?
No, Mr. Chair, but I just wanted to call the board's attention to the signatures referred to by the petitioner. They're printed on pages 31 and 32 of the packet. They were included in the application. And it's a form, it's basically a form that states that the undersigned do not have an objection to the variance request. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there questions of the applicant by the board? Mr. Ron.
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. and Mrs. Miller, in staff's packets, page 7 and 8, in response to standard number 6, there's some discussion about an on-site well for the property. If you could just speak briefly to that well and your understanding of potential need for perhaps future modification or continued compliance with on-site well for the newly subdivided
What
lots.
page number was that on?
Page 8, I believe, at the top. Just
Oh, yeah. Our existing well will be on Lot A, the northern lot. Our plan right now is to drill a new well on Lot B that will then have to be switched over to serve the old house. And our hope is that the new house will use the existing well.
thank you.
Ms. Dole. Would you turn on your mic?
Thank you. This variance request is very specific to and allow, to specify the square footage of the proposed lots after of the proposed plat. So I didn't see I guess I did see the proposed plat in here. Is this the plat that would be submitted for preliminary approval? Is that the one in our packet?
Yes, or something very, very much like it, yeah.
Okay, because it didn't have some of the square footage and also I wasn't sure about the setback. I have no other questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dole. Are there any other questions by any of the board members to the applicant? Thank you. I guess you could probably step aside for a sec. We're going to we're going to open it for public hearing, although I think it's going to be a pretty brief one, but I do need to ask for the record if there's anyone from the board or from the public wishing to testify. Anyone at all? Seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. And I guess that's rebuttal. Does staff have any rebuttal?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Dole brings up a very good point regarding the specificity of the variance. As the maybe the final engineering or design of the plat hasn't been completed before submitting to the planning division in order to record a plat, it might be safer to possibly eliminate those dimensions and just leave it into 2 lots, one of which will not meet the minimum lot size required in the CER 6 district, Chugach Eagle River district, because the specificity might be, if there's anything different from those specific dimensions, it could create a real problem for the applicants in their plat.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. And I'm just trying to come up with some editing of this department recommendation, and then we'll ask the applicant as well. If we were to strike, or on page 9, if the motion were to read approval of the variance from 2110 to allow the subdivision of one lot into 2 lots where one of the proposed lots will be, and then right there we just say less than the minimum 43,560 lot size required, and then strike the 7% variance?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that might be, so you will be, and starting with 40,537 square feet and less than the minimum 43,560 square foot lot size required in the district, and then just delete approximately a 7% variance.
Right.
And then just subject to the following conditions.
Sounds like the board, Mr. Chair, and staff are in agreement in the language. We ask the petitioner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ron. And I was just wanting to make sure Ms. Dole, did that capture kind of the question that you had raised as well?
That was exactly my concern, because it was down to, if it was off by 1 foot, it wouldn't be in keeping with what we might approve.
Thank you, Ms. Dole. The Millers, do you understand what we want to make sure that there's, the flexibility and the intent is achieved if this variance were to pass, but if you're off by 2 feet, you're not coming back to this board for a new plat.
Right, okay, yes, I understand. Yeah, I assumed there had to be some specificity in the application so they could, assure that we would meet the 40,000 square foot needed for on-site septic, and that only 1 lot is actually going to be affected by the variance, and the other, the southern lot, will be according to code. So that's fine. We need to strike some detail out of that.
And it will still be up to one of the other board members to make that motion, so we'll make sure that's captured, or we'll discuss that further as a board as well.
Just so I'm clear, we'll be removing the specific numbers, 40,557, all of that, and just leave it as one lot will be smaller than the code requirement?
Yes, that's the intent. My understanding and my thoughts are the third line would start, proposed lots will be less than the minimum, or one of the proposed lots will be less than the minimum 43,560 square foot lot size required in the CER 6 district, and strike the approximately 7%.
Great, thank you.
Is there any other rebuttal that you wish to have?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Ron.
if I could, the petitioner did raise the question about 40,000 square feet. Granted, we don't have a motion on the table, but since we are talking language, if it's in the petitioner's best interest for us to document that, then perhaps we should consider. But my position is that that's a responsibility of the petitioner to meet that requirement and is not essential to us including in the language of the approved variance request.
That was my thought as well, that they'll have to get an on-site permit, and we aren't looking to grant any variances. We can't grant any variances from the on-site requirements, so that's good to bring up. And it sounds like that they're also aware there is a minimum requirement for your septic system.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. But if a board member so chose to add that, we could discuss that as well. Thank you. I believe if there's no other rebuttal, then you can have a seat. The matter rests with the board. And if I could have a positive motion from a board member with respect to this case, please. Ms. Eicher.
In case matter number 2014-049, I move to approve the variance from Chapter 21.10, Table 21.10-6, Dimensional Standards, to allow the subdivision of one lot into two lots, where one of the proposed lots will be less than the minimum 43,560 square feet lot size required in the CE-R6 district, subject to the two conditions that staff list. Number one being recording of a notice of zoning action with the Alaska District Recorder's Office, and number two, recording a final plat for the proposed lots A and B northeast, 1/4 section 25T14N R2W SM Alaska. And I plan on voting in the affirmative for this request variance, as staff is
Ms. Eicher, could I just get a second to make sure that all your speaking is not for naught? But thank you, Ms. Eicher. Could I have a second, please? Ms. McKay, you've indicated you would second that motion. Thank you. Ms. Eicher, would you please speak to your motion?
I plan on voting in the affirmative for this variance request, as staff has walked us through the 8 standards, and I find that I am in agreement with the staff's recommendation that all the standards appear to be substantially met.
Thank you, Ms. Eicher. Ms. McKay.
I, too, am going to support the motion and concur with staff's recommendation, or staff's findings, and Ms. Eicher's findings as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. McKay. Are there other further comments? Ms. Dole, I wasn't sure if you were ready to vote or if you were just... I'm a little hard on... Oh, there we go. There you are. Okay, you care to
I
speak?
intend to support the motion. I do. I agree with staff recommendations. I would actually add a little bit more to finding one, to add that I think that it's not just the small size that's the exceptional or extraordinary physical circumstances, but it's the things that give rise to that, including the section line, the easement, the utility, and I think it's the utility easement.
Thank you, Ms. Dole. Are there other comments by any of the board members? My only comment is that I also intend to support this motion. This is, I think, the first case that's come before us with the new Title 21, and the Condition 7 is new to the board, I believe, regarding the ADA requirements. But again, I concur with staff's findings on that standards as well as all the others, so I intend to support the motion as well. With that, could we please vote? That motion passes by a vote of 5-0. I do need to read for the record that every final decision of the board shall clearly state on its face it is a final decision with respect to all issues involved in the case, and that the parties have 30 days from the date of mailing or other distribution of the decision to file an appeal to the Superior Court. So with that, the variance is granted. And that concludes our public hearings section of our agenda. Reports from the chair. I guess I'd just offer, I think that you saw that we have, I think we do have a meeting. No, we don't have a meeting next month. It's postponed to June, and I will be recusing myself from one of those cases. So is there going to be more cases, or do I get a June night off? Are there any other comments? Ms. O'Brien, do you have any knowledge of new board members that are just dying to come on the zoning board?
Mr. Chair, I haven't been informed of any new board members or any potential board members. But I'll try to find out tomorrow and email the board members if there's any new information or any information that I don't have now.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from staff?
Enjoy your month off.
Okay. Are there any comments from any of the board members? Any other board members? If not, could I have a motion to adjourn, please? Thank you, Mr. On, and Ms. Dole, you've seconded. With that, any objection? We are adjourned.